back, and today it is time for the weekly palettes video. I apologize for not having one up last week. I had pre-filmed the first one before I went on vacation, and when I came back, my eyes were so bad. I went to the doctor and apparently they thought I had either allergic conjunctivitis or viral conjunctivitis. Allergic conjunctivitis is just caused by allergies where your eyes are just, you know, react worse than normal, and viral is caused by a virus. So it wasn't bacterial, it wasn't that crazy like gunk coming out of your eye. It was just, they were just really red and irritated. So I didn't wear a whole lot of makeup for the first couple weeks I was back from vacation, just because I wanted to give my eyes a rest and some time to breathe. But I have been wearing makeup, and I wanted to share some of the palettes that I wore on the cruise. So let's jump into it. So the first palette I want to talk about is the Too Faced Sugar Cookie palette. Now this was a limited edition release that came out this holiday season, and this one and the Tickled Peach palette, and I don't think a lot of people really kind of caught on to these palettes, and they are just phenomenal quality. I've taken these on the past 2 trips with me, but this is the one on my last cruise I used the Tickled Peach more, but on this one I used the Sugar Cookie more, and again it was a shorter cruise, but I used this a couple days. I did use this with the Lorac behind the scenes eye primer. I'm going to try and tell y'all which primers I use these with. It's usually going to be one of 4, so just so you get an idea. But I used this shade right here, which is Butter Love, all over the lid from lash line to brow bone. Sorry, I'm reading my notes. I used Milk and Cookies as my transition, which is this shade right here, which makes a beautiful transition shade. I deepened it up with Burnt to a Crisp, and I just kind of deepened that up in my outer crease and outer V. I also used that right along the lower lash line and blended it out with Milk and Cookies. And then on the lid, I write it down every day so I can remember exactly, you know, what I used, so I can tell you guys. On the outer lid, I used Half Baked, which is this shade right here. And then on the inner lid, I used Fresh from the Oven, which is the shade right here. So I kind of blended Half Baked into Fresh from the Oven. And then for the inner corner highlight, I did use Nom Nom. It's a really pretty kind of glittery shadow, but it's a little chunky, but it makes a really pretty inner corner highlight. So that is what I used from the Sugar Cookie palette. The other palette I used on the cruise is the Too Faced Sparkling Pineapple palette. Now this palette absolutely surprised the heck out of me. I love this palette. I was so super impressed with it. So I used this palette with the Lorac, again, behind the scenes eyeshadow primer. I think that's the only one I took with me on the cruise. And so I took Yum Yum and put that all over the lid from lash line to brow bone. Then I took Passports and Pineapples and used that as my transition and really blended it out into Yum Yum. Then with this shade right here, which is called Tutti Cutie, right? Tutti Cutie. I use that just in the outer V and outer crease just to really deepen it up. Again, these are just simple looks, guys. I just took Tutti Cutie along my lower lash line and blended it out with Passports and Pineapples. Then I took this shade right here, which absolutely just stunned the crap out of me. This is called Island Queen. This shade I thought was going to be one of those just everyday, you know, green to brown duochrome shifts, and it's not. It has just the most beautiful gold shift in it, which you'll see in the picture, and I put that all over the outer 2/3 of my lid. I then took, which one is a Sparkling Pineapple, and Sparkling Pineapple, these are so hard to read because they're backwards, and put that right on the inner 1/3 of my lid. And then on the inner corner, I took this shade right here, which is called Pineapple Cooler, as a inner corner highlight. And I've got to say, I was so super, super impressed with this palette, and it just surprised me. I think this Island Queen shade absolutely surprised me with how it applied to the lid and the color that it was and how vibrant it was, that I just absolutely adore it. Plus the texture of these shadows, they're almost like a color pop type of texture. It's almost got that, you know, kind of cream texture to them. Really beautiful, really blendable, really happy with this palette, and I used it a couple of times. Plus the packaging is just stunning. The next palette I used, and this is just when I got home, so those were the 2 that I used on my cruise, is the Naturally Pretty Romantics palette. Now I love the Naturally Pretty palette. I think it's just a gorgeous formula and very, very flattering, especially if you're a little bit older, maybe have some texture on your eyeshadows, maybe you like matte shadows, but your skin's a little dry. This is almost a matte satin formula, so it's very flattering on the skin. So with this one, I did use the Wet n Wild Photo Focus eyeshadow primer. And for the transition, I used this shade right here called Indoor. For my transition, I used this shade right here called Adore. I used Embrace right here to deepen up that transition and start building up the color in my crease. Then I took Fate and it really deepened up my crease and my outer V, and I kind of blended it over towards the inner part of my lid. I also used Fate in my lower lash line. I used Embrace to kind of blend it out, and then I kind of eased up on the depth with Adore on the lower lash line. Then I took Peaceful as a brow bone highlight. It's really just my skin tone, so it was just a way to kind of tone down any browns that got too high and brighten up the look a little bit. And then for the inner corner, I took this really pretty soft green shade called Tranquility, and I put that in my inner corner, and then I topped it off with the Transforming Pearl shade. So it was just really kind of a brown smoky eye with a fun soft pop of green in the middle, and I really enjoyed the look. I thought it was really pretty. And again, I think the quality of these palettes, this IT Cosmetics Naturally Pretty formula, is really overlooked. And I think if you're somebody who likes a softer matte look but you're worried about texture or you're worried about lines, this is such a great formula. I really enjoy both of these palettes. Next, we're going back to Too Faced, and guys, I'm gonna apologize because I do not have a picture of this look. I don't think. I've been looking for it everywhere and I can't find it. So if I can find it, I will put it in this video, but otherwise you're just gonna have to bear with me. I apologize. So I use the Too Faced White Chocolate palette, and I use this with the Wet n Wild Photo Focus eyeshadow primer, and I really have been enjoying this palette just for soft, easy, everyday look. So what I did with this one is I took Cake Batter, which is, I've got to find the shades. Cake Batter is this shade right here, and I use that as my transition. I used Chocolate Syrup, which is this shade right here, and I used that to deepen up the transition and start deepening up my outer V. Then I took Smoked Sea Salt, which is this shade right here, and I deepened up my outer V, my crease, and kind of dragged that to the inner third of my lid. On the middle third of my lid, I blended Chocolate Syrup into sea salt, and then on the inner third, and inner corner of my lid, I used this shade right here called Indulgence. It's a really pretty, kind of just neutral beigey shimmery shade. It's really pretty. For underneath my brow bone, I took just kind of all underneath my brow bone, just to kind of blend everything out and soften it up, I used Banana Date, and then right underneath the crown of my brow, I used Glaze. Now for the lower lash line, I did, again, the same thing. I kind of went right into the lash line with Smoked Sea Salt. I took Chocolate Syrup and blended that out and brought it in a little bit more towards the inner corner of my eye, and then I blended everything out with Banana Date. And again, it made just a really simple, wearable, office appropriate look. So if I can find a picture, fingers crossed, I will show that. But that is how I used this palette. The next palette I used this past week is the Urban Decay Naked Cherry palette. I think Urban Decay has been really consistent in the quality of their palettes lately, and I just want to see them continue on with that. I'm really excited for the Fire and Ice Game of Thrones collaboration. But anyway, I've really been enjoying this palette as well lately. I feel like, I know a lot of people are saying it's kind of a one-trick pony as far as a palette goes. And yeah, it's not going to be as versatile as some of the other palettes I'm showing you, but if you want this beautiful kind of burgundy-ish cherry looking kind of vibe going on, this palette I think is phenomenal. So I did just use the Urban Decay Primer Potion for this one. I took Hotspot and I just put that all over my lid from lash line to brow bone. Then I went in with Caution and I just used that to kind of deepen up or start my transition. I then went in with Bing and really kind of started to deepen up the transition and deepen up the outer crease especially. I then went in with Privacy, and with Privacy I really deepened up the outer V, the outer portion of the lid, and made sure that outer crease was really deep and defined. So then I took Young Love and wet it down with a brush and applied it to the outer portion of my lid. I took Turn On, wet it down, and applied it to the inner portion, so outer and inner portion right here. Then for the lower lash line, I took Privacy and just kind of dragged it along the outer half of my lower lash line. I took Bing and kind of dragged that all the way over and blended out Privacy. I took a little bit of Feels and kind of blended that down. I was going for a smokier look, and then I softened everything up with Caution, just all right around here, just to blend everything out and make sure there were no harsh lines. And then for the inner corner highlight, because I feel like just for me personally, there's not a light enough shimmery shade in here to really make my inner corner pop, I took the Sweetest Bling from Wet n Wild. It was a limited edition highlighter. Let me just show it to you. which I recently talked about in a limited edition products I wish were permanent video. I took that, popped that right on the inner corner, and it worked so well. So was really happy with that look. The next palette I used was the Perfusion Chocolates palette. I've been wanting to get my hands on this palette for a while, and I finally saw it, I think in TJ Maxx, because it just reminds me so much of the Natasha Denona Gold palette, which just grabbed me. I haven't purchased it. I'm trying to resist, but this one definitely made me think of that palette. So I picked this one up. I got a deal. I think they're usually like 10 bucks. I think I paid like $4.99 for it. Anyway, I wore this palette. I actually wore this to the Cadillac 3 Charlie Daniels Band and Travis Tritt concert, and I loved the look. It was on St. Patrick's Day, so I thought it was very appropriate. So I took Sugar, which is this shade right here, and just took it all over the lid. I took Likeable, which is the shade right here, and just started to build up that transition with a fluffy brush. I then took Fuse, which is this deep kind of warm brown shade down here, and started deepening up the transition, my outer crease, my outer V. Then I took Quest. Now Quest is a beautiful green shade, but it's the only shade in the palette I really had an issue with. I got it to work, but I had to work with it a little bit more to really get it to stick where I wanted it to stick. I was sticking it right here with my, I was using my BR250 brush to really get it into the crease and build up that outer lid, outer crease, outer transition shade. And for some reason, I just couldn't get it to stick with that brush. So I had to go in with a flat shader brush and apply that color. Once I got it on there, it was fine and it blended out great, but it just for reference, it did give me a little bit of trouble, but we made it work. So I blended that out on the outer third of the lid and dragged that over. Then I took Cyprus, which is this beautiful shimmery green shade. It's got some gold, really fine gold reflect in there. And I kind of dragged that all over my lid and blended it into Cyprus. So that was on the inner 2/3 of my lid. And then I took Illusion, which is this a beautiful shade right here, and put that on my inner corner. And then for the lower lash line, I did kind of what I did with the Urban Decay Cherry palette. This went on the outer portion of my lower lid. This kind of blended all the way over, and then I blended it out with Likeable and just softened it up with a little bit of Gentle right there, just to make sure it was just blended out and soft. So I really did enjoy this palette as well. I'm excited to get into it and really see what this palette can do, and this is intriguing me as to other palettes from their new kind of branding and formulation. So really enjoyed that one. And I apologize, I used the Lorac Behind the Scenes eyeshadow primer with this one. And that brings me to what I'm wearing today, which is the Revealed Matte palette from Coastal Scents. Now, for those of you who have been with me for a really long time, you know that I love the Revealed 1 and 2. They kind of stopped me from getting the Naked 1 and 2 for a really long time, just because I felt like they were just fantastic palettes, and they still are. But I've been intrigued by some of the new Revealed palettes that they've come out with recently, and I just haven't pulled the trigger. And I got a coupon for a free Revealed 3, and from what I've heard, the quality's not that great, but when I swatched it, it seemed awesome. So I want to play around with it, but I went ahead and got the Revealed Matte, the Revealed Smoky, and the Revealed Rouge as well, which is their brand new one. But I really wanted to play with this one, and I've got to say I am really impressed with it. I just wanted to do something simple today. It's Daniel's parents' 45th anniversary this past week, so they're coming over today and celebrate. So I just wanted to do something simple. So I thought this would be the perfect time to try out this palette. So what I did is I went in with a fluffy brush and started building up the transition with this shade right here. I went in with my BR250 and started building up the transition and outer corner and crease with this shade. I deepened everything up just on the outer corner with this shade right here. And then what I did is I took this shade right here with a flat shader brush, and I just put that all in my inner corner across the inner portion of my lid and focused it right underneath the brow bone. I didn't do anything on the lower lash line. And I've got to say, I'm really impressed with how it blended out. I just wanted a soft kind of semi-defined look today, which is what it gave me. And I have a feeling this can go much darker and much more defined if I want it to. So I'm really excited to get in and play with this palette, because in my personal experience, I think the Coastal Scents Revealed palettes are absolutely fabulous for the 3 that I have now tried. So there's 3 that I need to look at and go through, but I definitely want to play around with this more because I'm really impressed with it so far. All right, everybody, so those are just the palettes that I've gone through. about the last week and a half as my eyes have let me play with makeup, and also the makeup that I used on the cruise. I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know if you like any of these palettes, or if you have any thoughts on any of them, and let me know what you've been playing around with this week. I'm always interested to hear what you guys have been using and loving. But as always, guys, thank you so much for hanging out and talking about makeup with me. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Have a rockin' week, and I'll see you next time.